So the intro, what I was going to mention before we started was, I don't know if you remember, but I remember when we first jumped into Iman's course. I don't know if you like I think we jumped in around the same time, and we kind of were in each other's like network through Facebook and like the group and being active and stuff. And I know you messaged me, which is pretty dope. So it's kind of cool that we've come like, I don't know, a year and a half in, 2 years in, and we're kind of like still in the same like network, which is
Yeah,
dope.
for sure.
So, and yeah, before I know you were like in the real estate niche, you kind of pivoted into like some different stuff, right? So Jackson, explain to the people like who you are, what you do, and we go from there.
Yeah, so I got my start in this online space, like you mentioned, when we both started off in E-Man's course, like many people do. And I was, classic SMMA niche, targeting real estate agents. Stumbled across cold email, I was able to get my first 10 clients through that. Like, hey, this is pretty cool. This is fun. I love this. And I want to start making videos about it. So I made a kind of cold email masterclass on just everything I did to get those, 10 real estate clients. And I think maybe I had less than 100 subs, and I got a DM from someone, hey, I'll pay you this much if you write my cold emails. I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I did that, and worked out really well for them as well. And I kind of hated working with real estate agents, and I had a lot more fun with the cold email. So I was like, hey, if people are willing to pay me for this, maybe I should pivot and go ahead and go into this. So that's exactly what I did, and pretty much since then just been all in on cold email. So yeah.
All right, okay, cool. And so like, who do you help exactly, and like what part of the process do you help them with?
Yeah, so I would say we've worked with like a lot of different B2B business owners. Right now, primary clients are literally just agencies and coaches. I actually have a couple coaches that cold emails are ripping for, believe it or not, with, non-done for you offers, sending pretty big volume as well, like, 15K cold emails per day for them.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say mostly agencies, worked with, insurance brokers, a couple kind of, different B2B niches here and there, but the primary is agency owners and coaches.
Okay, cool. So you basically help agency owners and coaches scale with cold email, and you have like a done for you offer and also done with you.
Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of like a hybrid. It's really helping them over 4 months kind of bring cold email in-house. Hormozi talked a lot about that in his book, his recent one, the Leads book, about partnering with agencies with the end goal of bringing it in-house. So he kind of, a lot of people started asking for that anyway. So I kind of pivoted to that model. So it's kind of, it's cool. It's a little more scalable where, we'll get paid, paid in full for 4 months up front, kind of help them build it in house, do a little bit of the done for you during those 4 months. And then, when those 4 months are up, typically what will happen is they'll end up paying a small fee just for ongoing consulting, and then they can kind of bring it in house. And, we don't have to manage 50 inbox managers and go really heavy on the done for you, and still do pretty well. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I can imagine it's a pretty complicated business model, especially with just like everything that has to do with going into the inboxes, monitoring deliverability, all that stuff. So I guess, how does like Inframail come into the picture? Because I know you were in it, you've been using it for a long time.
Yeah.
And how has it like helped in general, just improving the process in general and everything?
Yeah, so I've been really big on having, this is what I've seen work very well, is having a diversified inbox structure. So, a lot of people, when they, go to fire up some cold email inboxes, they'll go all in on, Google or Outlook. But what I like to do is, let's say that we need 90 inboxes to hit our desired sending volume. I'll do 30 Google, 30 Outlook, and then 30 Inframail. So it's nice to have that, diversification. And especially right now, like, things are changing on a weekly basis, and I'm seeing certain, email hosts doing better during, certain periods of time. So having that kind of diversified setup, it's really easy to pivot when the trend kind of shifts. And then we have a bunch of them warmed up, ready to send. Don't have to worry about, hey, all my inboxes were on Google. Google isn't delivering this month. Now we have to go through 14-day warm up, 14-day ramp up. And then it's a month before you're back at, full volume safely. So Inframail has been really cool. And we don't really have to worry. We only really have to worry about the the receiving end, right? Like with Google, if we're working with Google, we have to worry about the sending and receiving end because Google's in control of that. But with you guys have obviously built the platform around cold email. So we only really have to worry about getting in the inbox where, if we're using Outlook, if Outlook wants to block our emails at the sending level, they totally can, and they will. Being a bigger company where their user satisfaction is one of their biggest goals, and keeping spammers off, I shouldn't say spammers, but cold emailers off the platform. And so it's been really nice, and I've actually been really impressed with it, by the way. Inframail, I don't know if you saw, but when I first started using it, I actually said in a video, hey, I probably wouldn't use this right now, but I've completely flipped on that, and you guys have done a great job at improving over the past, I've been using it over a year now, and it only gets better each month. So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. And what are your results like in general? I know because you jumped in really early where setup wasn't even really a big thing. Now it's like huge. So back then, like with doing manual Google and Outlook, the setup obviously was like way faster. How's like deliverability look for you in general? How does just using it in general now compared to everything else work?
Yeah, I mean, so using Inframail, obviously, we get to set up inboxes with literally a couple clicks. We can migrate domains from, if we want to buy our domains from Pork Bun when there's a Black Friday sale like there just was, we picked up, close to 1,000 .info domains for like $3 a pop, right? I can migrate those over to Inframail, and as long as I'm paying that monthly subscription, we can create as many inboxes as we want with pretty much one click. Where if we were to set up, let's say, 2 inboxes per domain, let's just say 2,000 inboxes on Google, I mean, that's going to take a whole team of VAs and, hundreds of hours potentially of manual labor that we're also having to pay them for and wait for, and then there's a bunch of problems that arise within that process, a bunch of headaches. So it's super tedious. Where Inframail, we can buy our domains, bring them over, and I would say, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably less than 3 or 4 clicks, and you have a CSV file that you can plug into your sequencing platform like Smart Leader instantly. So it's super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you use like any automated Google and Outlook setup platforms now?
Yeah, so we've been using a reseller for Google, which brings down the price a lot. And so, nowadays it is a little bit, doing it that way, it is a little less tedious. And the reseller platform does handle that setup for us. But, it still takes, 3 days, potentially more. Whereas Inframail, we can get them going in like 5 minutes. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's still a little bit slow for sure. And so like generally with cold email, like what are your results like for your clients? Like some crazy results that you've gotten, like, calls maybe booked per month. That's like insane. How does that work?
Yeah, so we had one client in the coaching niche, pretty much selling a coaching program to other coaches, which is probably one of the most difficult niches to, really do anything in. Like ad costs are crazy. Cold email is going to be extremely difficult. And I think they have a 6K product, and I think they got like 3 PIFs within the first 35 days of putting the inboxes into the Smart Lead account, right? So that's including the 14-day warm-up. So about 18K cash collected in about, really the first 35 days. Now, obviously, we're sending out a pretty good volume, 300 inboxes. So that's about 7,500 cold emails per day. So it gives you a little taste of the volume it takes to, hit numbers like that. And that campaign's been scaling up really nicely. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So 18K cash collected with an offer selling coaches. How to sell your coaching?
Yeah. So it's a little different. Just for privacy reasons, I won't talk about their offer because it's very unique. So you'd probably know who it was if I did talk about it. But yeah, it's selling a coaching program to other coaches. And by the way, some of those inboxes were on Inframail as well. So we had that diversified setup, and those Inframail inboxes were doing very well as well. So
that's awesome. So like even with like, let's say the calls booked, how many calls would you guys book for a client where you've seen like something crazy where they're like, dude, this is insane, we're getting so many calls?
Yeah. I would say like I think I mean, we have one client right now. He's booking anywhere from 3 to 6 per day, Monday through Friday, pretty consistently. And so I would say that, and it really depends on the offer, but like if everything's dialed in and the volume is there, those are, I mean, it really just depends on the volume. I'm a big proponent of sending a heavier volume, and obviously Inframail makes that a lot easier because it's a lot cheaper and faster to scale up. But you can definitely fill up a 1 or 2 reps calendars for the month with just cold email. Yeah.
For sure, yeah, 100%. I mean, people can't even get like 5 a month. So getting 3 to 5, 3 to 6 a day, even at the low end, if you're getting 3 a day, that's 15 calls a week, 60 calls a month. Really good results. So right now, I mean, maybe you know it, working with a bunch of clients in the cold email niche and stuff, with a bunch of agencies. There's a lot of questions around cold email, like, before you could send, like 10 to 20 in a week, right? Like a few years ago, and you're booking like 5, 6 meetings, whatever. So how many emails do you think is the most optimal for anyone to start sending? Because you talk about volume. So like, what's the most optimal you'd say where you think this is because before it was like 1,000 a day, some people say 500 a day. What's your number? Because you do 15K a day for that coach, for example.
Yeah, I think a good number to start is like 2 to 3K per day. I think the game's just changing. It also depends on your TAM as well. Like if you do have a really small TAM, you're gonna burn through that really fast if you do crank up the volume too high. But if you have a big TAM, which most people listening to this probably do, I would say bare minimum I would start with to kind of get your foot in the door. Cold email is like 2 to 3 thousand per day. And then if you do have a little bit more cash flow, like 5 to 7 thousand for sure. I really like the number of 300 inboxes just for getting started with a new client if they can't afford it.
Yeah, 300 inboxes is definitely it's huge. So yeah, you're at minimum 2 to 3K a day before you speak like 500, 1,000, and optimally, like ideally you'd want to send 5 to 7K. So that's kind of like the volume at least.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess when it comes to like deliverability trends, a lot of things are changing pretty often. And you've said it yourself, like the different hosting providers, some work well than others at certain times. So what have you seen with that? Like, how do you keep up with that in general? Like, what's your process?
Yeah, so it's changed a lot for the average person. I would say before you could kind of keep up with things just by like, hopping on Twitter or going in the Smart Lead or Instantly Facebook groups or even watching just a couple YouTubers who talk about it. But now I think it's changing so fast that if you do want to stay ahead of it, you need to be, running weekly, even daily deliverability tests yourself because the intervals that, before, and you probably kind of felt this, there would kind of be like maybe a deliverability crisis, maybe like once or twice a year, where it's kind of like a big deal or a big change from one of the ESPs where everyone kind of had to pivot and adjust. Whereas now I think that interval has shortened significantly where there's like big quote unquote deliverability crises, like maybe once a month where a big thing is kind of changing or it's just getting more difficult. So what I do is, I don't know if you're familiar with Airtable, but we have a pretty cool I just call it a cold email operating system built out in Airtable that we prefer. Instantly is great. I just prefer Smart Lead because it does have, a lot more flexibility with the API. And so we fully integrated Smart Lead with Airtable where pretty much every little interaction or event that's happening on Smart Lead is going to get stored inside of an Airtable database. And then that Airtable database, so I don't know if you're familiar with Airtable, but there's, 3 core features. There's like a database where it's kind of like a, like advanced spreadsheets. There's automations, and then there's dashboards, right? So we can automate things inside of there just like Zapier, except a lot cheaper than Zapier. And so that's all integrated with Smart Lead. And then we have dashboards where all the data that's being stored in those tables, we can view through dashboards, and then we could set up automated reporting to Slack as well, right? So what we do is we track, and we, so a really good tool is Email Guard or Mail Guard. I always forget if it's a Mail Guard or whatever it is. But they have really good inbox placement tests that can be automated, and they have APIs. So we've also automated that as well. But also storing real-time data. So big update that Smart Lead just pushed out is they're automatically detecting the host of where all your leads are. So, if they're using Google, Outlook, or other. And so all that data is being stored in the database. And so we can kind of get these automated reports on a weekly basis. Hey, maybe Google is delivering better this week. Maybe Outlook is delivering better this week. And then we can kind of adjust real time kind of before, without having kind of like a delayed amount of time. Whereas if you're paying attention to YouTube, it might take you an extra month before someone starts really talking about the changes. So I would say having a real time feedback loop you don't have to go as far as creating kind of what we did with Airtable. If you're really serious about it, I would really that Airtable base, that'll be publicly available very soon. So if you do want that, you can check out my channel. But at the bare minimum, you should be running, weekly inbox placement tests, because, 1 week it might be near impossible to land in Outlook, for example. And so if you are emailing Outlook leads that week, you're essentially just burning sending power and burning leads and kind of just driving down the reputation of your domains. And so, if Google is delivering, the best 1 week, well, you should probably pivot all your volume to only Google leads. So I would say the biggest thing recently has just been tightening the feedback loop and then having real-time data. And, before you could get away with maybe running like a deliverability test like once a month, you could probably get away with just never running it, to be honest with you, and kind of just have a thumb on the pulse of, hey, replies are down, let's get some more domains. But now I think you really need to be, sleeves up in the trenches, and just getting real-time data on what the trends are. And also too, like, it's just not reliable to hop on YouTube and listen to what someone else is telling you to do for your deliverability, because it also depends on the niche, right? Like, I have a couple clients who target lawyers. Like, I have a big client who does recruiting for lawyers, for law firms. And, most lawyers, they don't use Google as like most law firms, they don't use Google for their email hosts. So it's like all the lawyer leads that you're pulling, pretty much none of them are going to be on Google. Like, sometimes it's 5% of the lead list that's using Google. And so someone else's advice, their niche, depending on what industry it is, the company size, 55% of their list could be on Google. So what they're telling you to do is based off data that is totally different to who you're targeting. So you really can't get away with just kind of winging it and relying on other people's data. You need if I had to nail it down to one thing, you need some sort of system that gives you real-time daily and weekly feedback. And then if you really want to take it advanced, having AI analyze that data and then kind of send you a notification based off a trend shifting a certain percentage in, hey, this week Google's delivering this percentage much more better. Maybe you should think about pivoting your strategy for this week.
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's definitely like a lot of operations, a lot of things that you're pulling in. I never thought about, I think the good point that you had was that every niche has different tendencies to use certain providers. So what someone, says is like, oh, you should use Google. Like, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know law firms, mostly use Outlook, for example, right? And you wouldn't really know that unless you had the data, quite literally.
Yeah. A lot of them actually use private providers too for like increased security, right? Because they have a lot of sensitive documents going back and forth over email, and a lot of those too, their spam filters are ramped up another level as well. So
that makes sense. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So to someone that just sends cold emails, like maybe not at scale to the point that you are, let's just say it's them solo dolo, just running emails for themselves, 5K a day, what would be like the necessary things when it comes to tracking? Like, let's say if they don't want to go through all the Airtable mess for right now, like it's just the bare minimum things at the least.
I would say like contact to lead ratio, or we're talking about like deliverability or like campaign performance.
Deliverability as in keeping track of the policy updates, like the placement test minimum at least once a week. What else?
I would say just get a good inbox placement. Like even Smartly, they just added a in-house feature for inbox placement tests. It's pretty good, and obviously that will be built into your current setup if you are using Smartly. So you don't need any external software. I would say if you just run that on a weekly or bi-weekly basis and you kind of just look at which email hosts you're getting the best deliverability with that week, and kind of just put that in a spreadsheet and look for any big shifts, and then kind of adjust to wherever that shift is trending towards.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, at least having a placement test once a week, just every so often, um, to test everything, in general. And as far as like right now, I know a lot of people, you work with a lot of people. What are the biggest mistakes that you see people making within cold email? Because we talk to a lot of people in support. We see some pretty, bad copy. We see some really weird stuff in there. What's a mistake that you see that people make where you're like, man, like what's going on?
Yeah. I would say literally the biggest thing, and it's so simple, it's so obvious, and everyone talks about it, but it's so true. It's just having a good offer. Like if you are trying to like that's probably one of the best things you could do for your deliverability, because you are gonna have a good reply rate, which is gonna, it's gonna make your cold email activity look, it's gonna simulate better human behavior. Because it's like when you're sending an email back and forth with a friend, colleague, whatever, it's like, the reply rate is going to be 60-80%. And so if your offer sucks and you have a 1% reply rate because no one really wants what you're selling, your domains are going to burn out pretty quickly, right? So really taking some time on the offer. It sounds obvious, everyone says it, but it really is one of the best things you could do. And then I would say the copy is people just get way too they just write really long. Okay, so this is a good example. The Airtable system, it tracks all the bulk calls that we've gotten across every single client account, and it stores them, and it gives us data like the average word count of a cold email that booked a meeting, and that average word count for us is like 61 words, right? Whereas a lot of people, they write these paragraph long emails. It's way below the fold. They're introducing themselves, hi, I'm Jackson. It's like no one cares. They just want to know what you can do for them. So very short, very sweet, very simple copy. Make sure to test a lot and just have a good offer. Yeah, and it should be, smooth sailing if you just get the fundamentals down.
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing that you said also is like the good offer relating to good deliverability is also a big metric, because going back and forth with someone, you get higher reply rates. If your offer is bad, you're quite literally just killing your deliverability. So it's actually important. You can't just be testing bad offers. So when it comes to like someone having an offer right now, how would you turn an offer that they have into like a good one? What's like an easy thing that someone could do? You could even give like an analogous offer, like a bad, how you switched a bad one to a good one, like an example.
Yeah, I would say, obviously, you could have a unique money back guarantee. Like maybe it's not just or you don't pay, which still does work, but everyone's doing it. I've seen some interesting ones where, someone who's selling to SaaS founders, it's like, and obviously this sounds a little crazy, but it's like, hey, we'll do XYZ or we'll buy your software, right? Or just some crazy kind of money back guarantee. But I would just say having, the metric that they actually care about. So, for example, if you're targeting real estate, like when I was targeting real estate agents, it's like, they don't really care. Yes, they want more leads, but it's not the metric that they wake up and get some excited in the morning. It's like they want more listings, right? They don't, and specifically listings, because if you're a real estate agent and let's say you're getting a bunch of buyer leads, well, the time frame it takes to actually liquidate the cash from that sale and get a commission, whatever you spent on your marketing, is potentially going to be a lot longer, because you have to drive around town showing them a bunch of different homes, so there's a lot more labor involved in that transaction. Whereas a listing, all they really have to do is drive to the house, put the sign in the front yard, sign some paperwork, and then market it. And so they can crank up a lot more volume out of listings for less work. And so a lot of the smart agents, that's the specific metric that they want. They don't wake up, hey, I want leads, hey, I want buyers, hey, I want appointments. They wake up, they're like, hey, I want listings, because listings are leverage, right? And so just switching to the metric that they want. I would say that to answer your question though, like what is the biggest thing is you don't necessarily need to have a better offer than the competition. I would say that's a big mistake I see is, oh, hey, my competitor is guaranteeing 10 listing appointments. I need to guarantee 20, and then it will work, right? You don't necessarily need a better offer. You really just need a different offer. That's what I've seen typically work, very well is, if and it could be something as simple as this, like, if the rest of the market is guaranteeing 10 listing appointments, we've seen big improvements by, let's just say, offering 7, right? It's a different number. It stands out a little bit more. It feels different, and it doesn't blend in as, them seeing that 10 listing appointment offer everywhere. So I'd say having a different offer than the competition. And so yeah, if I had to give like 3 things is, obviously a tangible metric that they actually care about, not some surface level metric that, it would be nice, but it's not their most desired metric. And then number 2 would be, having some sort of risk reversal, if you can, some sort of unique risk reversal that kind of stands out. And then, number 3 would just be having a different offer than the competition. So not the same number, or a different metric than all of them. And I also think too, like, you don't need to do some crazy outcome. Like, you've probably seen offers before, and it's hard to, I always have a hard time like putting tangible words to kind of describe it. But like, I'll get cold emails sometime, and it's like, I'm like, that's just a good offer. Like it's it's a metric that I want. They've said it in a unique way. Like, this got my attention. How can I not reply to this? Because I appreciate a good cold email, right? And so it's really hard to describe what gives you that feeling. But sometimes I'll see an offer, whether it's on ads or cold email, and I just get this feeling like that's a good offer, right? Like it sounds obvious, but I don't know necessarily how you manufacture that feeling, but I think everything just has to resonate perfectly with exactly who you're targeting, and then you kind of can.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people, like, one of the main offers right now that everyone copies is like the pay per appointment. Like, you don't pay anything up front. You just pay per appointment, and everyone says like the same things. We'll guarantee you 15 to 20 appointments a month. It's like always the same number. So just even tweaking that kind of offer just slightly, the wording, what you like, making it a more specific number, something like a little bit more nuanced or whatever, then it just automatically ends up, creating more results for you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. So what's one advice you'd leave people with, like, as far as with generating results with cold email? A lot of people have a tough time. You'd be surprised. It's hard out there. What do you think about the market being saturated, actually?
So I mean, I think with, Instantly, they've just been pumping probably millions of dollars into their marketing, and it's onboarding a lot of new people into the cold email space. They're also producing a lot of content, etc. So they're essentially bringing more people into this kind of automated cold email space. Where before, people would just hire a bunch of SDRs out of college manually sending emails for $70K a year, something like that. And so I think a lot more people are coming into the game, and because of that, the spam filters are going to get a little more heavy, because like I mentioned earlier, Google, Outlook, what they really care about is the customer experience, and they don't want people signing up for a Google account and getting a bunch of unwanted emails. And so, they're going to kind of become more aware of what we're doing on our end. And so it's almost kind of becoming like a battle of the AI in a way, because everyone's starting to use Clay and personalization and things like that to kind of make the emails more relevant, more AI, unique content per email, so it stays under the spam filters. But also Google is hiring, brilliant engineers who they're using their own AI to try to detect what's happening on the cold email end. So it's kind of in a way becoming, we're using AI to try to land in the inbox, and then the email providers are using AI. So to circle back to the saturation, I think a lot of people are coming in. I would say 80% of people still don't know how to send a good cold email. So as long as you can put in the extra work and kind of go through the learning curve and just dive maybe even just 10% deeper than that 80%, you're going to have a big edge, and you're still going to be able to stand out. But I definitely think the biggest thing is just staying on top of the game, and really, because it's changing on like what feels like a weekly basis right now. So really staying ahead of the game and being able to pivot your strategy constantly. And I still think it's, one of the best ways if you have a B2B business to fill up the sales calendar.
Yeah, 100%. Cold email is very scalable. I'll ask you one last question, because I know you gave a lot of sauce. And us starting the space of like infrastructure providers and it not being a thing like basically ever, a couple years before, it was really us and Superwave that kind of started this whole wave. What do you think about infrastructure providers in like this new cold email generation? Do you think it's like necessary because spam filters, like you said, are getting stronger? All these things are happening. What's your thoughts on that in general?
The way I view it is a way to mitigate your risk, right? So if you, like, again, like I was mentioning, it's like you guys aren't going to be blocking us at the sender level, right? Whereas Google or Outlook might, but also, for example, Zoho, right? Zoho used to be one of the big email hosts that people would use for cold email. And then there was that Zoho apocalypse, as people like to call it, where, pretty much overnight it was unusable for cold email for the most part. And so if you had hundreds of, sending accounts on Zoho, you're pretty much were screwed by, within a couple days. And so I view it as a way to mitigate risk, especially as you do start scaling into these higher numbers. It is if Google decides, if someone at Google wakes up one morning and they're like, hey, we're going to destroy all cold emailers this week, this is getting too far, you're still going to be able to keep your sending volume where you want it if you do have some private infrastructure accounts on your SmartLead account. And so that's really the way I view it, is a way to mitigate risk. But like I mentioned, having that diversified inbox structure, because again, it's like some weeks it might be really difficult to send with Google or Outlook, and if you do have some private infrastructure accounts, you can potentially shift more of your sending volume towards those for that week. But again, like I mentioned, if something does happen with Google or Outlook, you're able to sleep okay at night knowing, hey, we have this percentage of our inbox allocation with a private provider, and we can keep sending in the event that does happen.
For sure, yeah. So basically just diversifying, because it kind of goes back to what you were saying, like diversifying. Every time a client comes on, you get Google Outlook, Inframail inboxes, and just going with other, risk mitigation. Very simple.
No.
Okay, we'll do some like hot seat questions. This is just for fun, but instantly or smart lead?
Smart lead.
Okay, open tracking on or off?
Off.
Personalization or no personalization?
It depends. Test it. If you do use personalization, use Claygen. There's no other way to do it, in my opinion, is using Claygen, specifically the AI web scraper. But test it, because we've had niches where the personalization does more harm than good, and then we've had some niches where it's the key to the whole campaign. So test it.
Okay, for sure. So it depends on the niche.
Yeah.
Okay. This is some fun ones. Creatine or no creatine?
Creatine.
Yeah, I take it all the time. Sparkling or still?
Sparkling.
Okay, fair. And then last one is New York or Miami?
Miami.
All right. That one, I think I'll go with New York on that one. But
yeah. I knew you were gonna say that.
But no, Jackson, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Appreciate you having me.
Where could people find you, by the way? Like YouTube? I know you're popping.
I would say YouTube's gonna be the best place. Just look up Jackson Williams cold email and you'll stumble into some of my videos. I do really long, very in-depth master classes, Google Doc bangers. Like, I have like a 3-hour cold email masterclass on my video, which I'm updating right now. So if you go over to my channel, subscribe, you'll probably be just in time for that. And it'll pretty much give you everything you need for now to succeed until I have to make another one in 2 weeks. So
for sure. Yeah, I'll put your channel in the description. Anywhere else like Twitter, Instagram?
I'm not super active on any of those right now. I would say if you had to go one place to find me, it's going to be YouTube for sure. Yeah.
Okay, for sure. Awesome. Yeah, I've seen your videos, man. They're amazing, but I appreciate you coming out and the recording here. But yeah, peace out, everyone.